Now we can see that the warm temperatures are slowly fading away. Days are getting shorter. This means that winter is definitely coming. So it's important for gardeners to consider their next moves for their gardens. And for many gardeners in the Southern Hemisphere, that will be to consider or make plans for their winter vegetable garden. So in today's video, we will be discussing some of the techniques that most seasoned gardeners and farmers use to ensure that they plant their winter vegetable gardens in time. So by the end of this video, you should know how to determine the best planting dates for your winter vegetable crops based on your regional climate. So all of that is coming up in this video. Welcome to Veggies and Herbs. My name is Ruben Molale. Now, one of the best dates to actually plant your winter vegetable garden will be determined by two factors. The first factor is what you will be planting. Second factor is when will the weather be the coldest in your area. So we will be breaking this down, and at the end of this video, we will discuss the three approaches that you can use based on these two factors. So let's first discuss the first factor is you need to know what are you planting for your winter vegetable garden. If you are not certain, I did make a video of my 10 favorite cool season crops. I will put a link of that video in the description. But in addition to knowing what you will be growing, it's also important to know the days to maturity of each crop. Now, normally, most packs will include when the vegetable will be ready. That is the earliest possible date that this crop will be ready for harvest. So that can be indicator, but it's important to know that during winter things are slowing down. So it's advisable to add an additional 20 to 21 days to that day, just to accommodate for the fact that during winter time, crops take much more longer to grow. So that is the first factor. Now let's move over to the next factor. And later in the video, we will be putting everything together. But the next step is you need to know when will the weather be the coldest in your region. Now, the first frost dates have been used by many farmers and gardeners to determine when the area will be the coldest, because frost, the first hard, heavy frost can possibly damage some of your crops. So to protect your crop, it's important to know when the weather will be the coldest and to know your frost dates within your region. Now in South Africa, the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research has compiled a document that outlines when the provinces within South Africa will at least experience 20%, 50%, and 80% first hard frost on average. So it's important to know that these are just indicators, it's just guidelines, because frost is very erratic. You cannot definitely say when it is going to frost, but these dates can just be used by gardeners to actually make sure that they understand how the climate in their regions operate. And I've also checked out the farming handbook written by Barry Smith. According to Barry Smith's book, it is evident that there are primarily two provinces in South Africa that experience very long frost periods out of the year. So, and those provinces are the Northern Cape and the Free State. So the Northern Cape and the Free State, they experience approximately 90 days to 120 days of frost out of the whole year. The rest of the other regions like the Lowveld, the Bushveld, the coastal provinces, the Eastern Cape, those provinces or regions, they experience a few days, but up to 30 days of frost. So it is evident that most of the provinces or the regions in South Africa do not experience extreme long frost periods. But it's important to know that things are changing. I've seen the climate changing in our area, so it's important to know that climate goes in cycles. Some years it might be warmer, some it might be colder. But I think this information can help us to put together a planting strategy, which we will be discussing in the next section. But I think it's just important to mention that if you are not living in South Africa, you can always consult your Department of Agriculture. You can Google your area to determine the first frost date and the heavy frost dates. So in the next section, we will put together different strategies depending on your region. So the first strategy will be for areas that receive for very extreme cold weathers. So remember I indicated the first frost date. So for this approach, you will make your first frost date your harvesting date. So the way it works is, for example, the first step is to identify the crop that you will be growing. So in our case, for instance, if we take beetroot, then we need to determine what is the days to maturity of the crop. So according to this variety, the days to maturity is approximately 60 days. So that is the expected harvest. But then we add an additional 20 days to accommodate for the colder areas. Once we have that, it brings the total days to approximately 80 days. Now we need to find out what is the first frost date, average frost date, and then we count 80 days back, and that will give us our approximate time to plant our crop. So in this instance, if we take the northern province, for example, the first average frost date, or the date when 50% of the province will be experiencing frost, is approximately by the 19th of June. So we take that date and we count back 80 days, which will bring us to approximately the 31st of March, roughly as a date to plant. Now that is for areas that are very cold. In my opinion, I believe our South African winters are not so extreme, but this is just to drive a point to say that if you are trying to be safe, you will then use the first average frost date to count back, and that will give you the day that you need to plant to make sure that when you experience the first average frost date, that your vegetables, your crop will be safe. Now for areas with milder winters, you will use the first heavy frost date as your harvesting date. So if we stick to the same province, the northern province in this case, firstly we will take the same approach. First step is identify our crop. What is the total days of maturity? We will add additional 20 days. We will establish what is the total days that the crop needs to grow. So if we stick to the northern province, the first heavy frost date is early July. So then we will just count from the early 1st of July, we count back 80 days, and that will give us the best planting date for that area. So this is for mild for areas that experience a mild winter. Now the third approach is the approach that I'll be using. This approach is to say that, man, I want a succession approach. So even in summer, end of summer, I will start planting some of my winter crop. Since the Western Cape is one of the provinces that receive less than, say, 30 maximum periods of frost, for me, the best approach will be to make sure that even in autumn, I start to plant my crops, so that every month when we get to winter, I will have already some of my crops ready to be harvested, even in autumn and in winter. For example, I've already transplanted some broccoli in late summer, and I'm in position now to harvest some of my broccoli plants. But this is the approach that I'll be using, because I'm of the view that the region that I'm living in, frost will not be such a major issue. But hey, we have seen cycles going crazy lately. So to be safe for me, it is just to make sure that I ensure that I do succession planting as I'm harvesting some of my warm season crops. I make sure that I replace it with some of my winter vegetable garden crops. I hope this add value. If you want to find out some other techniques of ways to protect your crop, I'll put a link of a video here, as well as the March edition of what I'm planting. You can check it out. And April edition is coming soon, where I will be sharing what I'm planting, transplanting, and also showing you guys some of the things that I'm harvesting. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next one. Keep on sowing and growing. Cheers.